we actually increased the feed from the Colorado River, and that happens by a request to LCRA, the Lower Colorado River Authority. That, again, is in Bay City, 141 miles away. That request goes in, and then they let us know that the water is available to take. And so that occurred. Monday, we started pulling from Mary Roads Phase 2, Bay City. That water moves 41 miles down to Edna, where we have Lake Texana, and the raw water is mixed there and then sent through the Mary Roads pipeline the remainder of the way, 101 miles to Owen Stevens Water Treatment Plant. Now, when the from that. Now, when it gets to Owen Stevens, it further mixes in a pre-sedimentation basin with water from the Nueces River, which each Monday we put in a diversion request with Wesley Seal Dam, who then puts in the water to the Nueces River and makes its way to Owen Stevens. Now, it's about a 3-day process from Mary Roads up in Bay City to get to Owen Stevens on Thursday. Whenever it's there, again, it lands in the pre-sedimentation basin with all the sources in there. No noticeable change was noticed on Thursday. Now, on Friday morning, 10 a.m. Friday morning, 10 a.m., our operator did notice the smell coming from the basin. Why does the water smell different? Basically, it was what he was asking. We looked at the variables. One of the variables that was changed, again, is the increase in the Colorado River water. The other variable is the temperature was below 40 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, right? We deal in Celsius a lot. Almost slipped up there. But below 40 degrees. So sodium permanganate is one of the optional chemicals that we add to the treatment of the water to optimize the process, and that specifically targets organics that could deal with taste and odor issues in the water. Now, below 40 degrees, that chemical cannot be used because it gets really chunky, it creates inefficiencies for the pumps, it could bust hoses, so that was actually shut off for 20 hours between Thursday and Friday. Now, without that chemical, we're not able to target the organics and improve taste and odor with that. So again, we were without that. That was one variable. The other variable. Bust hoses. So that was actually shut off for 20 hours between Thursday and Friday. Now, without that chemical, we're not able to target the organics and improve taste and odor with that. So again, we were without that. That was one variable. The other variable was the increase in Colorado, which we hadn't increased for a few months because at the tail end of 2021, in our source water, we're trying to utilize all of our contract water with Lake Texana and LNRA, the take-or-pay contract. I'm trying to utilize as much of that as possible. So less Colorado was used during the latter part of 21. Now again, January, we have our new water procedures and plan, and that's when we increased the Colorado. So that as soon as we found that out, 10 a.m. Friday, I met with Murphy, Chief Operations Officer. We decided we're going to shut Colorado off. That was the immediate action. But again, we have that water at the water treatment plant, so it must be treated in the conventional treatment process without permanganate because the temperature was below 40 degrees. So at that point, we had to continue treating the water, and then it gets into the distribution system. Now, other actions that we took anyway, preemptively, was to begin flushing the system, opening hydrants, flushing it from the distribution system from Cal Island to the island, proactively doing that to release water. Also, all of our elevated water towers and ground storage tanks, working to cycle those and make sure that they're cycling appropriately. Then we began receiving a number of calls on Friday. We issued out a press release. I did a couple interviews with 2 different news channels as well to let the public know that we're monitoring the situation. We know it happened, and we're working to improve the treatment process there. And so that's what happened with this event. So we knew about it. As soon as we knew about it, they made the call to me. We shut the water off from Colorado. Now, the water at Colorado It's probably our most variable surface water source. All surface water is variable in taste and odor and quality, being that it's exposed to the elements. Obviously, surface water treatment is the most challenging of the treatment processes. Now, the other thing is it mixing from Bay City to Lake Texana. That's step one, right? And then it shoots another 101 miles to us from Etna. And so that's about a 3-day process before the water gets to us. Now, when the water was there at the source, we never got any indication, because we communicate with LCRA and LNRA, never got indication that it was any different than normal until Friday, when we noticed it there at the treatment plant.
So I mean, what I'm getting from what you're telling me, it seems to me like it almost, if you're going to do a large water draw like that from the Garwood supply, and you know there's been historical issues with that in the past, maybe it'd be worthwhile to have somebody from our staff drive to Bay City and find out whether or not there's a problem.
We'll look at that in terms of getting someone to Bay City, but besides that, once we clean out our pre-sedimentation basin at Owen Stevens, that project's ongoing, and removing the sludge there. Our plan is to put aerators in there, and what those will do is create aeration or oxygen being released from the water there, bubbling. And so what that'll do is help with the aesthetics and the taste and odor in the water, in the raw water there, before it gets to the conventional treatment process. So that's another item that we're planning, but we can't put them in until we get the mud out of that basin.
Leslie mentioned it's very hard for us to look at people in the straight face and say we have a superior water rating when it tastes like dirt. So,
taste and earth odor, earthy odor, but was discoloration a situation this time?
So there was only a few calls that had discoloration. Mostly it was, again, taste and odor. There was a few that had discoloration, and those were in older parts of town where we have cast iron piping, and that's the only locations that had some discoloration.
Right, so there was, by and large, it was not a color issue.
No, sir, it was mainly aesthetics, the taste and odor issue. And again, some people were more sensitive than others in terms of being able to sense that change. Some people have called me and told me, hey, I didn't notice anything. I don't know what they're talking about. So some notice it, some don't. And with surface water, again, the quality and aesthetics is variable day by day. And then the treatment process should alleviate most of that.
Water we're dealing with. We treat over 1 billion gallons every 12 to 13 days. 1 billion gallons of water. Now what has happened in this particular case is we had a 70 million gallon plug making its way through the city. It was not obviously it was not our intention that happened initially. But once we found out that it did make its way in, then we took all the steps that we could think of to minimize or mitigate the impact. There were still some that got through the system. It got to the apartment I lived in. I noticed it too. I never noticed the discoloration, but the taste and odor was definitely there. And so that's what we're working right now to mitigate. But as you can sort of track the water making its way through the city, and it's going from the Cal Allen area, which was the initial impact. And what we did there is we immediately shut it off and then started draining fire hydrants to mitigate that impact. But the water's in the system. I mean, like Gabe said, once the water gets into the treatment plant, it has to go through the system. You just can't empty, an 80 million gallon treatment plant. It has to make its way through. And the conversation I was having with the city managers this morning is, when did you notice that there's an issue? And we didn't notice the water coming in. And Councilman Pusley, to answer your question, it wouldn't have been noticeable from the Colorado side of it, because it got all the way here, and we did not notice it until it made its way through the treatment facility and then was gone. By then, 70 minutes, because it's a big plant, we're pushing a lot of water. And for like 20 hours, we didn't notice that there was a problem. So we're going to work on that part of it and see if we can address that and maybe come up with some protocols. I like your idea about before we do a big stir in our system, have somebody there at Colorado and just check it out. That's a great idea. It's an undertaking that we do. And the permanganate issue is rare. It doesn't happen all the time. And so us knowing that it was going to come because the temperature was going down, we didn't know, because there's a lot of times it has no impact whatsoever, because we are blending that water and we continue to blend that water. So Yes, it was not good. It's not what we want. We don't want a black eye. We don't want anybody to be put under the microscope like that.
And now, going on 6 years on council, this is the first time that we've had this type. We have other issues with water, but this particular water quality issue on there with our disinfectant and coagulants. And thank you.
Thanks.
Event, were there any signs or any types of results that you got from your testing that would throw up any red flags for us?
No red flags throughout the testing. Everything's testing in the green and where it should be. There's no indication of poor water quality, and the water's been safe the whole time. The main thing that's changed is the aesthetics, or taste and smell, for some people, not all, because again, I've had several people say, well, I didn't notice anything. What's the big deal? But again, we still take any complaint seriously, and it's a big issue that we need to get fixed.
I appreciate it. Thank you.